Last week, things heated up as we looked at the firing actions within NARM 68. And this week, they're going to get even hotter as we go danger close and take a look at off-table fire support. So welcome to the gaming table, and today we've got a bit of a different setup because we're going to be looking at off-table support fire. And really this is everything from mortars right through to aircraft such as helicopters coming in for rocket attacks. And for the majority of off-table support, you're not going to need a model for it. Now, within each scenario, the US platoon will have a number of fire support requests, and this is all dependent on the size of the game and the threat level of the scenario. And for more details on this, check out page 59. Now, I should say for off-table support fire, if you want to follow along in your rule book while we're going through the video, check out page 37. So to set the scene, we are in a Lima threat level game, which is low. And for this, the only off-table support fire available is going to be mortars. Now, on the left of your screen, you will see the commander, his RTO, and another trooper from the squad that have managed to get to the edge of the paddy fields. And they've come under fire from a machine gun team over on the right side by the building. Now, it's important to also note that within the game, depending on the threat level and the number of squads, as in the size of the game, you'll get a certain number of fire requests. And for a Lima level game, if you have one squad, there is no support requests. If you have two squads, there is one, and for three squads, there are two requests. So for the purposes of this scenario, we're going to imagine that there is two squads in this game, and therefore they have just one fire request. So with the rounds coming down from the machine gun towards this command team, they have decided to use an advanced action to call in some off-table support fire. And we know from page 58 that because there's two squads, we can have one request per game. And looking at page 59, we know that a Lima threat allows us to only request mortar fire. Now, within page 59, we also get the details for the availability roll and the delay roll that we'll need to do. And we'll come to that shortly. But most importantly, we also need to know what is firing. So we have an 81mm M29 medium mortar off table. And for each request, we're going to have 3 mortar rounds landing. And we're going to resolve those rounds separately from the same target point. So now the scene is set, we are going to go through this 5 steps to call in off-table support fire. And we'll start with step 1. Request support fire. Now, to do this, we have to use an advanced action, request support fire, on a model with a command special rule. And in this instance, we've got the commander at the front of this group of 3 guys on the left. He also needs to be in base contact with his RTO, which we can see as the second person in that row of 3. So now they are together and the commander has his radio with him, we can use this action. So next up we have step 2, select type of fire. Now, having looked at page 59 at the US Force section, we can see that the only support available to us in this Lima level game is the mortar. So we will select the mortar to fire and we'll move on to step 3. So moving on to step 3, and we need to now roll for availability. For each type of support fire, there is an availability dice roll listed, and for the mortars, it's a 4+. So what we would do is we would roll a d6, and if we get 4 or more, then we pass the test, the support fire is ready, and the request is used. And we then move on to step 4. However, if the roll is failed, then whatever the support element was that we were calling on, it essentially wasn't available or ready. And therefore the request is not used and we can try again in another turn. It should also be noted that the availability can also be modified by the type of platoon making a request. So for example, it's easier for airborne infantry platoons to request helicopter gunship support. And therefore it's worth checking in the US Forces section with their arm of service. So moving on to step 4, delay. So for each type of request, there is a delay, and that will be the number of turns it takes to get whatever the support fire is ready to fire. For some support, there may well be a delay of 0 turns, in which case it arrives exactly the same turn as it was requested and can be resolved immediately. However, if there is a delay, such as maybe 1 turn, and for this to determine this delay, we roll a D3 for the mortars. So let's say I roll a 1. It will be available at the start of the turn after I have requested it. Once the delay is complete, we can then move on to step 5. So step 5, fire for effect. So once the support fire is available and it's time for fire for effect, we do this at the start of the US turn before any actions are resolved. And fire for effect is broken down into 4 sub-components. So let's take each of those in turn. So the first part of fire for effect is place target marker. And this can be a marker, any description really. I've taken one from my battle group tokens box. And what will happen is the commander needs to place the marker somewhere on the table within line of sight from the commanding model. So I'm going to place this in this corner near the paddy fields. And that is going to be the centre of the incoming fire, essentially the grid reference given. Next up, we have deviation, and this is a roll to see how close the support fire will land to the requested spot. So what we do to start with is roll a d6 dice, and we look on the table on page 38 in the bottom left hand corner to see what the deviation is. Is it wild? Has it deviated? Or is it accurate? Once we've done that, we will then carry out the instruction for that one. So for example, if I rolled a 6 on the deviation roll, then what I would do is I would then roll a random direct dice and move the target 1 d6 worth of inches in that direction. And that would be the new center for the fire. So let's do that now. So we've imagined that the fire has moved a very short distance because it was accurate in a sort of southerly direction and is now more in front of the building on the right. So let's move on to the next step. So the next step is to resolve fire. And what we're going to do for this is we are going to place the weapons template or measurement, if you haven't got a template, from the new target point to check if any models come under it, and then we'll resolve the fire as normal for the ammunition type, which for this we're using HE because that's what the mortar has. So we'll put our template, and I can't massively do it because of where the building is, but we're very, very close, and we've got 2 of the models within that template. So next, what we do for mortars is we go over to targeted fire with HE and we work through from step 6 detonation onwards. And for that comes under the fire section, which is page 28 through to page 33. And then what we would do with detonation, we would have a look to see if the figures come under the template, which we have, and then we roll a d6 for each model because we're looking at the blast. And we're looking to roll against the blast score, which can be found on the weapons chart, and it's available as one of the quick reference sheets in the back of the book. So that's mortars. Rockets and artillery do the same. And then for minigun, you resolve it as suppressing fire with the very large blast templates in Beaten Zone. And moving on to the final component of Fire for Effect, and that is step 4, the morale counter. Now, for being under off-table support fire of any kind, a player must take a morale counter. And this is in addition to any morale tokens or counters taken for casualties caused. And this is simply because being under attack from heavy weapons is fairly intimidating and shocking. Now, it should also be noted that if you've been under fire from multiple rocket pods, then you have to take 2 morale counters in addition to any casualties caused. And that is the final step on the support fire and how we play that in the game. So there we have it, the off-table support fire actions. And it should be noted, if I wasn't very clear in that final stage, when you're firing for effect, you need to resolve each of the rounds. And the mortar, we get 3 rounds. So you would get 3 attempts at seeing what damage is done to those figures. Now, with most of the basic actions completed or been walked through and talked through in this series, there's just 2 more that I want to touch. The next is going to be morale, and then finally we'll be looking at the post game sequence. However, if there is something you'd like me to go through in a video, do please drop a comment below in the comments. I read them all and I respond to them all, and I'd be really interested to know if there's anything that I've missed that perhaps you'd like a bit more clarification on before we get through to the sort of battle report game, which I hope to put on record for you so that you can see a whole game in sequence. Now, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank everybody again for all their support, the views, the comments. It really does mean a lot, and it's really great to see this series being so successful on my channel. Obviously, if you play other games and you'd like me to do a similar series for a different game system, then do please drop a comment below and I will take that into consideration when I start to think about the next How to Play series. But until then, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.